6 months ago, Danielle Smith was Ottawa's most determined adversary on energy policy. She was launching legal challenges against federal regulations. She was passing the Alberta Sovereignty within a United Canada Act to resist federal interference. She was the loudest voice in the country, arguing that Ottawa did not understand Alberta and could not be trusted to act in Alberta's interests. This week, she stood in front of cameras and made two announcements that would have seemed almost unimaginable 6 months ago. First, she announced she will personally campaign for Alberta to remain in Canada in the October 19th referendum. Second, she promised that if the Remain side wins, she will never initiate another separation process during her premiership. That is not a small shift. That is the Premier of Alberta, the province that generated 301,000 separation petition signatures, personally committing to campaign against separation and promising to close the door on it if she wins. How did that happen? The answer is the Calgary Agreement. And understanding why requires understanding exactly what Carney offered Smith that no previous federal leader had been willing to offer. Not just a pipeline, a relationship, built on shared interests, shared outcomes, and a shared commitment to making cooperative federalism actually work.
And the federal Liberals, led by their new leader, Prime Minister Mark Carney, adopted most of Alberta's positions on energy and resource development. In fact, the current Prime Minister has worked very constructively with our government to craft an Alberta-Ottawa Energy Agreement, or MOU, as it is often called. This has already attracted tens of billions of dollars in investment for new pipelines, natural gas-run data centers, electricity generation, and so much more.
Adopted most of Alberta's positions. That is Danielle Smith, in her own words, describing what happened when Carney became Prime Minister. Not a compromise where both sides gave something up, an adoption. The federal government moving to Alberta's position on energy and resource development. The destructive electricity regulations gone. The oil and gas production cap scrapped. New pipelines proceeding toward construction. A 1 million barrel per day pipeline to Asian markets on track for permitting completion by September of next year. Smith has been fighting for those outcomes for years, through legal challenges, through national advertising campaigns, through relentless public pressure that she herself describes as making a lot of noise as a province. And she got them. Not from a conservative government aligned with Alberta's political traditions, from a Liberal Prime Minister who looked at the strategic reality of Canada's situation and concluded that Alberta's energy vision was also Canada's energy vision. That is the foundation on which everything that followed was built. Because when Smith stood next to Carney in Calgary and signed the implementation agreement, she was not making a political calculation about optics. She was acknowledging a reality. The federal government had delivered, substantively, on the things Alberta had been demanding. And that delivery changed the political calculus in Alberta more fundamentally than any constitutional argument or national unity campaign could have. You cannot tell people who are angry that their anger is unjustified, but you can address the substance of what made them angry, and Carney did.
But one of the benefits of actually sitting down and talking about these things, as opposed to litigating about these things across the federal government and provinces, is that it develops a shared understanding, a recognition of what needs to be done, an understanding of why this is the right thing to do, a commitment that goes beyond what's written on the page. And that's where we're moving between the two governments.
A commitment that goes beyond what is written on the page. That phrase from Carney in Calgary describes something that is very difficult to manufacture and very easy to destroy. Genuine trust between two governments that have been adversaries. Smith acknowledged it in her own speech this week. She described the process of working with Carney's government as constructive. She said things are a world of difference better for Alberta than they were under the previous federal government. She said both major federal parties are now advocating for Alberta to increase its energy production and exports. That shift in Smith's characterization of the federal relationship did not happen because of a single agreement. It happened because the agreement was real, because the pipeline is actually advancing, because the oil and gas production cap was actually scrapped, because the electricity regulations were actually changed, because the carbon market framework was actually redesigned to deliver an effective price that creates genuine investment signals rather than a nominal headline number that nobody actually pays. Carney's approach to Alberta was not strategic communication, it was strategic delivery. And the difference between those two things is exactly what Smith is describing when she talks about a commitment that goes beyond what is written on the page. When governments deliver on their commitments, trust builds. When trust builds, the political space for compromise expands. And when the political space expands, a premier who spent years fighting Ottawa can stand in front of cameras and say she is going to campaign for Alberta to remain in Canada. That is what delivery looks like at the level of national unity.
Our Alberta oil sands went from a national target to a national treasure. Pipelines went from impossible to a national imperative. Justin Trudeau's anti-Alberta, anti-energy policies became a national embarrassment, and the federal Liberals, led by their new leader, Prime Minister Mark Carney, adopted most of Alberta's positions on energy and resource development. In fact, the current Prime Minister has worked very constructively with our government to craft an Alberta-Ottawa Energy Agreement, or MOU, as it is often called. I believe Canada can still work. I believe it's working better every day.
From a national target to a national treasure. From impossible to a national imperative. Those two phrases summarize a shift in Canadian national politics that Smith herself helped engineer through years of relentless advocacy, and that Carney then converted into federal policy. And here is why Smith's decision to campaign for Remain is so strategically significant for Carney's broader agenda. The separatist movement in Alberta drew its energy from the same frustration that drives populist movements everywhere. The feeling that the system is rigged, that legitimate grievances are ignored, that accommodation by the federal government is impossible, and therefore exit is the only remaining option. Smith's no more referendums promise, conditional on Remain winning in October, is the most direct possible answer to that frustration. Not an argument that the system works perfectly, an acknowledgement that it has not worked well enough for Alberta, combined with a specific, verifiable record of what changed when the federal government actually listened and delivered. The oil and gas production cap that was going to devastate Alberta's energy sector is gone. The electricity regulations that were going to make Alberta's industrial sector uncompetitive are changed. The pipeline to Asian markets that everyone said was impossible has a July submission deadline and a September 2027 construction start. The carbon market that was delivering a $20 effective price is being redesigned to deliver $130 by 2040. That is the case Smith is making for Remain. Not that Canada has always been fair to Alberta, that Canada is getting better at being fair to Alberta, and that the moment to give up on that trajectory is not now, when the trajectory is finally moving in the right direction. Carney did not just sign a pipeline deal in Calgary. He gave Smith the evidence she needed to make that case.
In a Canada that works. A Canada rooted in cooperative federalism, where we build together, pragmatically and ambitiously, to achieve our shared ambitions. A Canada where our differences are strengths to be nurtured and respected, not risks to be managed. A Canada that's strong but good. A Canada that's not just prosperous but fair. Not just for some most of the time, but for all of the time.
For all Canadians, all of the time. That commitment, made in Calgary alongside the Premier of Alberta, is now being tested in the most direct possible way. A provincial referendum on October 19th, where Albertans will decide whether to remain in Canada or begin the legal process towards separation. Smith has made her position clear. She is campaigning for Remain. She is promising no more separation processes if Remain wins. She is pointing to the Calgary Agreement, the pipeline, the scrapped production cap, the changed electricity regulations, as evidence that the Federation is working better than it was. But the outcome is not guaranteed. 301,000 Albertans signed a petition requesting a referendum. Many of them are not satisfied with the pace of change. Many are not convinced that the Calgary Agreement delivers enough. Many have concluded that the accumulated frustrations of decades cannot be addressed by a single agreement, however comprehensive. Carney understands this, which is why his approach to Alberta has not been to declare victory and move on. He has kept the momentum building. The Parliament visit, where he honored Alberta's contributions to Canada, the recognition that Alberta workers and engineers are essential to the nation-building agenda, the pipeline progress that is visible and measurable and happening on a specific timeline. The October 19th referendum will be the most important test of whether cooperative federalism can actually deliver national unity in a province where frustration with Ottawa has been building for decades. Smith has chosen her side. Carney gave her the evidence to choose it. Now it is up to Albertans.
Canada's working. We're working in a spirit of cooperative federalism to make the country better. We're renovating the country as we go, and Alberta being at the center of that is essential. It's essential for the workers. I look forward to working alongside Premier Smith, alongside the Leader of the Opposition, alongside all parliamentarians, all 37 members from Alberta, and Canadians of all stripes, Albertans of all stripes, to build a better Alberta, build a better Canada.
Build a better Alberta and a better Canada. That is the offer Carney has been making to Alberta since taking office. Not a constitutional negotiation, not a national unity campaign built on sentiment and symbolism. A pipeline with a construction start date, a carbon market that actually works, a production cap that no longer threatens Alberta's economic future, a federal government that shows up, listens, learns, and delivers. Smith's announcement this week that she will campaign for Remain and promise no more separation processes if the Federalist side wins is the most visible proof yet that the offer is being accepted. Not universally, not without ongoing frustration and legitimate demands for even faster progress, but by the most important political leader in the province on the most important question Alberta has faced in a generation. 6 months ago, Smith was Ottawa's most determined adversary. This week, she stood in front of cameras and said she believes Canada can still work. She said it is working better every day. She said now is not the time to give up hope in the country. That shift did not happen because of a speech or a promise or a constitutional argument. It happened because a pipeline went from impossible to a national imperative. Because an oil and gas production cap that was going to devastate Alberta's energy sector was scrapped. Because a federal government sat down with Alberta and built something that went beyond what was written on the page. Carney's most significant strategic victory is not a trade deal or a defense agreement or a record investment number. It is Danielle Smith standing in front of cameras saying she is voting for Canada. Stay with this channel for every development as October 19th approaches.